Hey everyone, it's Lindsay. I just wanted to get on here and make a quick announcement about what you're about to hear. As you've heard rumored, Steve Barnes and I had decided to do a big wrap up of 1899 where we were going to go over the show is the big picture and all the things we liked about it, our favorite characters. We had such a great time that we ended up talking for over 3 hours about 1899. And in order to make it a little bit easier on you, the viewer or listener, we've decided to break that wrap up into two parts. In part one, we'll go through the making of 1899 and also our rewatch notes as we went through and watched it in a quicker pace than we did during the recap episodes where we watched episodes every 1 or 2 weeks. So we'll go through those notes and our general thoughts about the show and just sort of introductory stuff. And then in part two, we get into our favorite characters, who we'd want to have a beer with, our favorite moments of the show, what we thought was coming next, and talk about Bo and Jantje's future projects and about our future as collaborative partners working on a dark recap coming up next. We hope you'll listen to both parts, but just know that there is a part one and a part two of this 1899 wrap up. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Well, I'm ready to talk about our superlatives now, if you are.
Oh, of course. I want to give them their awards.
Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about is our MVP characters, our top 2 or 3 characters. Who do we really want to shout out as being the characters that made our day when they showed up on screen?
How about the maker of the simulation itself, Maura? Come on down, Maura Franklin. I mean, she's definitely my favorite. If you're going to ask me later who I want to hang out with, I might say Maura because, she's the creator of it all. She's the protagonist. Maybe she's the antagonist. Um, I think it goes without saying she's a lead character. Do you disagree with that?
She's the lead character of the show,
Well,
and
of course.
she's a very interesting person, but I don't trust her. And so she's definitely somebody who was interesting, and she got more interesting and complex as you went along. But I don't know if sometimes when you have the main character, they don't end up becoming your favorite because
Yeah.
you're almost in their perspective. So you almost are that character.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So who
But
would
you're
you say
also a
is
guy. You're
what's that
also a
now?
guy. You're a guy. And so it's like, you like Virginia, you like Mara. Anthony
Uh-huh.
would do the same thing. I'd be like talking about Ike and he'd be like, well, I really like Mara. And I'm like, well, okay.
Well, guess who's like everybody else is men in my group. No, actually, there's 2 women in my group. I've wrote down 6 characters as my MVPs. My top 2 is actually 6. But
I knew I
Mora,
couldn't control you, Steve. You got like
yeah,
6 characters written down.
but Mora came out on top. I definitely ranked her number 1. And I have a character ranked at number 2 that I have a strong feeling is your number 1. So tell me who is your number 1 or who you think is top.
Well, it's tough, but I feel like my number 1 character is gonna have to be Jerome.
Yes, that's what I thought you were going to say. I love Jerome too.
I mean, if we didn't already love Jan Gall, we got to fall in love with him even more because he was responding to us on Instagram, and we're like, oh my gosh, he's answering us.
Like I said, that was a moment in time I'll never forget. I mean, he was awesome.
But his character is definitely the one that he just, whenever he came on screen, he just stole your attention away. I would say everybody loves an underdog, and while he's not necessarily a definite underdog, he goes through a lot of mistreatment during
Yeah,
this show,
I would say he was an
especially
underdog.
from
Yeah.
Franz. our sauce boss, as you like
Yeah,
to call him.
I do.
Guys, if you haven't watched Sweet Child of Time, they have a nickname for almost everybody on the show. So not for Mara. There was no Mara nickname, but
Or Jerome. Jerome was straight up Jerome.
that's true. That's true.
He was always a class act. Like when he
Mhm.
faced adversity, and when there was a quick decision to be made, he always made the honorable right decision. I mean, he was such a good character that our boy Nate was suspicious. And if Nate was here right now, he would tell you he's suspicious of Jerome and Oleg because those two guys are too good and they're too honorable, and he just doesn't trust how good and honorable they are. Even back in the day before they were on the boat, when he was hanging with his buddy Lucian, and they were starving to death and everything, he still wanted to do the right thing, even if it, cost him starving. So
Mhm.
yeah, he was a tough one to not put at my top, but because I thought about it. But
Yeah. Well, Bo and Yantya do really like to set up those ambiguous characters. So usually everybody who seems perfect, you do find out at least one thing that's a flaw. And then if they
right.
seem like irredeemable, they're going to show you something that is good about that person. And so I'm fairly confident maybe we would have found out something from Jerome's past and Oleg's past that maybe wasn't so great. And that's not always true. I think there was one character in Dark that did remain spotless the whole time. But for the most part, they like to be in the gray.
Yeah.
And but Jerome was always, like you said, he always had a lot of empathy, even at the end when Lucian is not doing well. He can't help himself but be concerned about his friend
Yeah.
and to be there for him, even after a terrible betrayal. Um, but also, he was a great fighter, and he didn't, he could have really tried to spark on Clemens, and he didn't. He was an honorable man,
yeah.
and yeah, he was definitely an interesting character. His entrance is one of the most interesting of all, coming from the shadows, and just we aren't really sure where he came from and why his entrance is different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Um,
We would have found that out. And eventually we would have found out he was a boxer because that's what the promotional material said, is that he was a French boxer. So that's
mhm,
why he could fight so well, I guess, being in the military and then also having that fighting training. So he knew how to handle six big tough dudes.
mhm. Yes, he did. And I feel like I've even seen scenes that they didn't take place, but I feel like I've seen photo stills of Jerome in a boxing ring that never came to be. So there might have
Mhm.
been things that they even filmed that we never got to see. But yeah, he was probably my favorite character. So did you have other top ones you wanted to shout out, Steve?
Yeah, well, I guess. Well, I've already said my favorite one too.
Hmm.
So I think it's your turn actually to bring another character into the fold, unless your second character is Mora, which I have a feeling it's not. So do you have
Yeah,
a number two or a
it's
number three
not.
you
I
can bring in
think
here?
another character I want to shout out would be Oleg, Jerome's buddy.
Yeah.
Oleg probably has one of my favorite moments in the show of anybody, and it's when Franz starts the rebellion down in the cafeteria,
Okay.
the third
Yes.
class, and you know, Jerome just sorry, Oleg just kind of gets up and tries to be as still as possible and dip out the door without anybody noticing him. And of course, he doesn't make it, but that scene always cracks me up. It's just his face is so funny. Um, but he's another person that in a very tense situation remained calm and cool and really didn't let anything fluster him. I don't think the only time he lost his temper is when he was trying to get Ike to, Ike had asked him to do this mission to find out how much coal, and he had done that. And I think he hoped maybe that would put him in Ike's confidence and he would talk to him, but Ike
Yeah.
was not. And so he swears out in the hallway and punches the wall. But
Yeah, does one of those tough guy moves. Yep. But yeah, that was it. And it's normal to be frustrated by something like that. Um, so yeah, I think Nate was most suspicious of Oleg. Something coming out, especially, we got that black oil all over him, so we don't know if, that's representative of something, and that bloody trail leading to that oil dump. I mean, it looked like it was a crime scene. And I think Oleg was in on the crime. I hate to say it,
well,
but
in all fairness, everybody's pretty dirty the whole show. Even the people like, Mara, who's the
yeah.
first class. I mean, she was sweating practically the whole show. She was a
Yeah.
redhead and light colored, so just like me, even when I get hot, it takes a lot to make me sweat, but she was sweating pretty much the whole show. And I had no idea why they decided to make her like that, unless that was supposed to be part of her madness, quote unquote. So you're always sweaty. But
Or nervous. It's like a thing about anxiety and being nervous and
that's
sweating.
true.
I'm a sweater. When I get nervous, I absolutely sweat. It's what happens. Um, my last ones, I'm not going to go into great detail, but my other ones I picked out besides who we said there is, of course, Ike. How can you leave Mr. Ike out? Virginia. It's no secret I'm in love with Virginia. And Clements. I put Clements in there too, because I guess I should explain, because Clements seemed like she was on the side of good, ready to do the right thing, whether it was with Lucian or with Jerome or whatever. It seemed like she would be a good partner to have around. She always has your back. She had that little suspicious look on her face that first episode. We don't know what was up with that, but after, beyond that moment, every other time you see her, she seems like sincere and, I don't know, wanting to connect,
Mhm.
and that's nice. I like her
Clemens,
for it.
yeah, I mean, in general, I agree with you. I did, however, on my rewatch, and I didn't say this, but I did notice that she really wasn't doing a darn thing during that they're like, their awkward sex scene, her and Lucian. She was just laying there with her arms like this, and it's
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
really was sus, that I was like, who does that? Nobody does that unless that was part of. I was trying to think of, okay, what excuse could there be? I know maybe back in those times in society, maybe it was thought of as being inappropriate if you were female and enjoyed sex. So maybe that was like what you were supposed to do as a female, is just
Right.
let the guy do everything. Maybe that was the feminine way or
So
the
she thought
society
she was
way.
doing the right thing, and Lucian was like, "No, that's not right."
So you want to give her a pass on that, but it
No, I don't
really
want to give
was.
her a pass on that. You're absolutely right. I took it more as that I knew that the show was going to have different seasons. So again, I'm just delving into territory I don't know. I think we would have seen in Clemence's past that maybe she might have been traumatized and didn't enjoy sex.
Mhm.
Maybe didn't enjoy sex with men. I don't know. Maybe that's what the pants suggested, but I think maybe she just didn't enjoy sex at all. Um, and so, you know,
Mm.
that's, I mean, and it frustrated Lucian, of course. They couldn't talk about it for whatever reason because it's 1899. But
Yeah.
I'm not giving her a pass, but
Yeah.
sometimes there could be traumatic reasons for that.
That's true. I also wondered if she knew Jerome before. This is another thing I didn't say before, but she when they meet on the her and Jerome meet on the deck and she introduces herself, you get the feeling, because of several things that happened, that perhaps Jerome does remember more than the rest of people. And he
Hmm.
says, you're right, I did make up my mind about you as soon as I saw you. But when did he first see her? It
Good
could have been in
question.
the past.
Yeah.
And if he and Lucian were war buddies, sure, they could have met in the field, but it is also possible that they were friends before they were on the battlefield, and maybe Lucian was in love with sorry, Jerome was in love with Clemens already, or maybe he just loved her from a distance, or yeah, all kinds of things could have been.
Yeah. I'm thinking immediately like it was actually Jerome and Clements that were together. And then, um, you know, Lucian shows up. He's now a general. and Jerome's gone, that nobody knows where he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Hey, you're my new girlfriend, Clements," and
Right.
then he
Isn't that
makes
what
her
happens in the
forget.
Count of Monte Cristo? The guy,
Good
Count of Monte
call.
Cristo gets
Yeah.
locked up, and his buddy goes to comfort the fiance.
Yep. And maybe like she got one of those shots of the what, the white juice, and like she forgot about all that.
Right.
And that's why
So,
she's there, to remember all that stuff. I don't know.
the white juice. It took me a minute to understand what you were talking about.
Okay, sorry.
That good
I was just
old 1899 drug, the white juice.
yep, the forgetful stuff. I don't even know if I got that right. If it's the black that makes you forget and the white that makes you remember, or vice versa. It's in my notes here somewhere, but I'm not going to
The
start
white
flipping.
makes you remember, the black makes you forget.
Okay, there you go. So
Yeah, I'm fairly sure. Tell us if
specul
I'm wrong and put it in the comments if I'm wrong, everybody.
I mean, this is like real-time speculation. We're just thinking about this on the spot here. So this is great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked about our MVP characters.
Yeah.
What about side characters that you want to call out on this show?
I want you to take a wild guess who my favorite side character is out of everybody.
The garlic dude,
Heck
Landon.
yes, Landon. That's exactly right. And I even wrote down here Michael Landon, because I do think that that's what that whole thing was about. His name is Landon. He's talking about the wolves. Michael Landon wrote, Call of the Wild, about the wolves. I think that's a literary call out. I think Tobey's name is a literary call out to Jabberwocky. But yeah, Landon's my favorite guy, my favorite side character. He was hilarious.
I hate to poo-poo on your theory, but that author is Jack London. But okay.
Michael Landon played that character in the Call of the Wild.
Oh,
And he
okay.
played that's it. I'm sorry. Michael Landon played the character Teenage Werewolf. I got this all wrong. Michael Landon was absolutely the teenage werewolf. There you go.
A teenage
It's
werewolf?
yeah, that 60s movie, I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
Okay. You're not thinking of Teen Wolf, because that's Michael J.
No,
Fox.
that's Michael
Okay.
J. Fox. That's
Okay,
correct.
great.
Michael
Okay.
Landon was absolutely the
This is
teenage
great
werewolf.
podcasting, everybody.
It is. We know our stuff like the back of our hands. But at least we can correct each other. I said something absolutely wrong. You corrected me. Thank you for that. Seriously.
Regardless of if he referred literary reference or not, Garlic Man is definitely a notable character. I know you liked the humor on that one. Are we considering Ada a side character?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think I definitely want to call out Ada.
Yep.
I missed her as soon as she left the show. I mean, her corpse or her body, her vessel was still there. For episode 3, I think it was. But yeah, she was sort of a glue, I would say, between Crester and Tobey, and as long as she was around, Tobey had that hope that Crester would make good on his promise that he was gonna run away with her and they would start their new life together. But also Ada she was able to communicate for her family when they couldn't. And she was the only one that wasn't possibly traumatized by,
That's right.
in any family. If a trauma happens in the family, it happens to the whole family. We know that from our psychology lessons now, that even when there's abuse or trauma going on, it affects every member. And so Ada obviously would have had effects from that, but she was the only one that wasn't there and sort of had an innocence about her that the rest of their family, because they don't talk about anything. So obviously they never told Ada what happened.
Well, you asked who my favorite side character was before. I wrote down Landon, and then I wrote down Ada. That was my other favorite side character. So I'm glad we see eye to eye on that. I also wrote on here, I was going to tell Nate that Ada is not creepy at all. She's a wonderful young lady. And I think that she represents young Mora. I think that she's almost like a show stand-in for like a young, smart girl who is interested and things that she can't even hardly comprehend at her age, but she's still like wrestling with big ideas. So Nate, Ada is a wonderful side character, and she's not creepy.
Even though you're not here, Nate, we're still arguing with you.
Oh, we'll send him a copy of this for sure. We'll force him to watch it, like The Watcher.
I also feel a moral obligation to call out Wilhelm, just because he got called Neville Longbottom the whole show, and
Sorry.
but also he was a loyal shipmate and kept working, and he had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
And his friend, quote unquote, Sebastian or Kieran, just decided for really no reason to put him out of commission.
Yeah. He was definitely his own man, because Franz's best friend was Eugene, I think.
Right.
And then Sebastian was kind of his own person. Ike was kind of off on himself. So yeah, Wilhelm didn't have really anybody. And he seemed like he was really anxious and worried about this whole thing. And seems like a responsible young man.
He feels very, you can tell when they're beating up on Oleg in the bridge. He's feeling very uncomfortable about the whole thing.
Yeah, as he should. That's great.
And he was starting to question Sebastian at the end, which is, I guess, why Sebastian took action. But he was like, I think the captain was right. And, he realized too late that he was on the wrong side of history with this one.
Hey, maybe that empty pod is actually Wilhelm. Nobody has guessed that.
Oh, well, the empty pod, what would crack me up about that is that, I don't know if you saw, but I put it on the Facebook group. And I had said, who do you think the empty pod is? And someone said, well, I thought that was just the pod that Mora came out of.
Oh, right.
Like, oh, dang. Okay, well, maybe it's that simple. But then I saw that somebody said there was actually another empty pod. So there was still an empty pod.
Oh my gosh. Me and there's a person that we follow each other on Instagram. Their name is Person I Feel Lost. That's like their Instagram handle. But we dissected that scene together so hard, and like we had like a diagram of it, and there's an empty pod next to the window, and there's an empty pod over there next to Ike, and then so we like knew the whole like room, and we identified all the people. It was kind of fun. It was a cool thing.
Yeah. So what did you guys come up with? I know a little bit of a tangent here, but did you decide who was in the empty pod?
Oh no, we disagreed about it, just like everybody disagrees about it.
Okay.
But I'm saying now it's Wilhelm. It's got to be him.
It's got to be. Great. Other side characters?
I didn't write anybody else down. Aside, I mean, I know they existed. I guess we would call Franz a side character. I think he might be a good person that might be in that empty pod. He's a good contender because he was in every episode and he played a significant role.
Yeah, I don't think of him as a side character.
I don't either.
Guess, but
yeah. We don't have a lot of characters to deal with. There's supposed to be like 2,000 of them, but I mean, we're only dealing with like 24 people.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've probably mentioned everybody. I mean, like, we don't really need to talk about Redbeard. It's fine. Like I don't remember what that guy's name was. I did know his name for a while, but
yeah, I remember I was impressed by that. Because I didn't bother to learn it.
It's on IMDb.
Okay. I just know that like he manhandled Virginia. So he's dead to me, man. I'll tell you that.
Okay, the characters that we despised, or the characters that we loved to hate, whatever we decide to call this section.
Well, you were right about this. I didn't want to like say like despise, because it's like, it's like your least favorite character on like your favorite show. So you kind of like everybody. So like, even if we say like who we hate the most, it doesn't mean that we hate that character. It just means they happen to come on the bottom of the list.
They didn't do bad acting. We're not saying that the writing wasn't good, but I think when you watch the show, when you care, that obviously there are characters that really grate on your nerves, and you think, why are you still existing, and why are you still acting this way? So I think we're still going to talk about it, but who did you write down, Steve?
I wrote down three names. No surprise in the first one, Crester. Because just like going back and seeing all his interactions with Tove, first watch through, you think Tove sucks and Crester's this like sympathetic guy, and then like it all gets turned around episode 6. Um, he was the first guy to jump over. He had a bad nervous energy. He was just he was written that way. He was my least favorite of all of them.
Hmm.
How about you?
I guess yeah, I can't despise him. I feel sorry for him. He's a character I definitely feel sorry for. I do think he's a coward, and he's the type that if you try to talk to them about a way they've wronged you, he just goes in defensive mode and
Mhm.
goes on attack. And that's
Yeah,
definitely not an attractive quality.
right.
Um, but I can't necessarily despise him or think he's the worst. I still don't know exactly why you think he's the worst, but my most my most despised character would be Lucian, just because he's whiny, and he's a character I don't feel sorry for because he's always playing that victim mentality and thinking his life is worse than everybody else's.
Right.
And even when people are trying to communicate with him, he just can't do it. He can only see that his own point of view.
That's valid. I didn't write down Lucian as one of my bottom characters, surprisingly. Um, but yeah, I thought about him. I thought about putting him down there. He's a close contender. Um, I still don't understand why you don't see why I don't like Crester, because I think I've spelled it out many times. I don't know what
Mhm.
else I can say, but I'll go on to my next character, which is
Mhm.
it's an easy gimme. Nobody likes Iben, so I'm gonna put Iben down there too. Like from like her judgmental stances to like her freaking out to like her making Anchor pray in the water and die right there in the hallway, like in just a random hallway. I think she deserves to be at the bottom. And I think that's maybe why I adored her so much, like laying down there in her robe in the making of 1899, just because like she charmed me. I loved that moment and it made me feel differently about her. Because up until then, I hadn't seen her as a person. I've only seen her as Iben. And at that moment, it humanized her and I liked it.
Mhm. Yeah, Ivan's an interesting character. I think what helped her for me to not be as despicable as all that, although I definitely dislike her, and I was, or maybe that I was waiting for the moment that she would see the boy and have to be like, "You lost. You lost, Ivan." And I was so bummed that she decided to kill herself instead. She didn't live to see what I wanted her to see.
Justice.
Um, but I guess for me, the way they wrote her character was you understood her perspective and how she saw the world, and she
Yeah.
lived that out with integrity for that warped belief system. She had a compass, as sick and twisted as it was. She had her belief in God and how she wanted to live her life, and she did that until the very end. And so for me, that made her very formidable and scary as a
Okay.
person. But it didn't make me dislike her. I didn't really dislike anybody, honestly, except for Lucian.
Okay. He's your big one, huh?
I'm just he like I kept waiting for maybe they would do one thing. Because like I said, Bo and Yantia, they love to live in that gray area, and even the most despicable character, you end up seeing something redeemable about or figure it out. Maybe it would have come later, but all he did was whine about his life. um yeah, so I don't know if I have anybody else, but go ahead with your third person. Maybe it'll spark something in me.
Uh, hot take. No one's gonna like this. Um, I wasn't really super impressed with Ling. She's down there by default. Um, Not because I disliked her a whole lot, but when you have like a ranking of characters, somebody's got to fall into the bottom three. Lucian's lurking there around bottom four, bottom five, but Ling made it down to bottom three. Just because I didn't really feel that connected to her. I felt like she just made a lot of goofy mistakes. She was kind of in the way a lot. She was like when I say in the way, like she was like helping, whoops, hello, helping Oleg with that coal chute unnecessarily, helping Oleg steer the ship unnecessarily. Like, it's like, is this your character? Your Oleg's like partner? I didn't really see much that like really like, and really endeared me to her.
Mm-hmm.
So by default, she falls on the wayside. I liked Lucian more because I connected with it. I didn't connect with this character, but he was more of a fun character to watch and watch his sniveling face and watch how crappy he got and watch the crappy stuff that came out of his mouth. That was kind of fun. I like that.
Well, we at least got a really great meme out of it, if nothing else.
What's that?
Or like the meme about the what was it? Smudge, our smudge meme. You don't care if I live or die.
That's right. With the earrings and the
With the
cat.
cat with the triangle
That's
earrings.
right. I
Yes.
didn't know Smudge. I guess that's the name of the cat.
That's the name of the cat.
I
Yes.
don't, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm sorry, I don't remember that, but that was fantastic.
If nothing else, we got a fun meme out of it. Like I
Every
said.
day.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have liked Ramiro as well, but then he sort of came into his own, and when pushed, once he was away from Angel, he sort of was able to forge his own path. And before he was kind of like the guy who's jealous for Angel's affections.
Yeah.
I never like it when a person's arc is just about their romance. And maybe that's how you feel about Ling. That's all they really gave her to do is just follow Oleg around. Hopefully they would have made her more interesting, in the next couple seasons. But yeah, she also wasn't really allowed to express herself much.
Yeah.
With her character being dressed up in geisha attire, and she wasn't allowed to talk. And so yeah, she was another kind of mopey character. Now she wasn't as mopey as her mom yet, but that was where what she was heading towards is the bell tolls sort of future where you're just like, we should never have come. Yeah, she had like that. Yuck had that negative mom energy where she's just like, you can't come back from this. You'll be like old chewing gum, and if you sleep with this man, you become just like garbage. Yeah.
Let me redo my list here. I forgot about Yuck. She's more of a side character. She was in the spaceship though. She was in the spaceship Kerberos. So I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I've forgotten about Yuck actually as a main character. So I probably might have put her down there too instead of Ling, but
yeah, I didn't feel, I mean, nobody should feel obligated to like, I have to come up with 3 characters in a show I like that I want to say that are least, but you gave yourself that challenge, and I can admire that.
Yeah.
Steve, you're like Ivan, you're gonna follow it through.
That's right. The God has led us here, so we have to go through with this and say who we hate. Well, yeah, now we're moving into more positive territory though, right? We're gonna talk about better things.
We're gonna talk about the character that we feel like we're most like. I'll go first this time because I do know this one. The character I feel that I most like would be Mara, because she is that female living in a man's world trying to make her way. She has been given the opportunity to study, but not to practice medicine. And she refuses to be sidelined and to follow the expected path a woman should take. I don't feel like I necessarily chose that. Maybe I did more than I think that I did. You know, obviously here I am still 46, not married, no kids. Even though our world has changed, that's still pretty unusual. And that's not necessarily what I chose for myself. But here I am, and I often feel sidelined in this world when um, you know, if you're with a bunch of women at a baby shower, for instance, and everybody acts like everybody's had babies before,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
you know, you'll go to a thing. We had a health insurance, or no, it wasn't health insurance. It was a session on preparing for the end of your life and how to do that well. So, how to make a will, a living will, and all these documents you want to get ready. And the guy giving the presentation kept saying over and over again that you need a second person. This will probably be your spouse, or this will be your spouse. And I finally put in the chat, not everybody's married. Um,
Yeah.
so can you
Legit.
use some different examples, or at least not talk about that as if every single person in this room has a spouse, because that's not the case. And you just often feel that you're not like everybody else. And I think that that's definitely how Mara feels. And so I related her to her 100%. She's reading books and not wearing her corset, and not she's wearing pants, and she wore pants before Clemens saw the light. So yeah.
That's great. I admire that. I admire all of that. Um, geez. Uh, I know that I wanted to say Mora too in a way, but I couldn't. So I see myself more as your key, your Ike, I suppose. I don't have as deep of a response as you did, but I look at Ike and he's a man that self-medicates, and something that I'm well familiar with. He's confused in this show a lot, and he's trying to figure things out, and he wears his anxiety and his confusion on his face, and you can see it, and you can see it in his demeanor. And I see that in myself too. Like when I take things seriously, and when I'm, really feeling passionate or anxious or upset or depressed, it's blatant and it takes over all of my emotions. And I can see that in Ike as well. He's definitely like not a happy-go-lucky dude that's going to be like hanging out with the boys. He's going to be brooding. I'm a brooder too, maybe a surprise because I like to be upbeat on my podcast and stay positive. But yeah, Ike also seems like he was a pretty good dad when he was at home. He had a good relationship with his daughter. Didn't have a great relationship with his wife. His wife had her own problems too that he wasn't necessarily helping with. And, I'm part of a family, I'm part of relationships, and we all have problems. And we all like to think that, we're as helpful as we can be to like our spouses and others. But, there's failures. And that happened with Ike. It happens with me. I mean, I see Ike in myself. I think these two main characters were really well written. I think it says something that you, a female, chose Mara as your main, and I chose Ike as my main because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to like relate with the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
So Bo and Jante, you did it.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we move on to the next question, I did want to ask you a follow-up question about Ike's arc. Maybe this would be a good time to put that in.
Mhm.
In the show, obviously he has this special relationship with Nina,
Right.
his daughter Nina. Now,
Nina.
he lost
Nina. Sorry.
in this fire. And the answer is probably going to be that you don't know and we'll never know, but I'll ask you the question before I assume that.
Okay.
In the fire, he loses his wife and two other daughters, but
Yes.
he ends up, it's almost like Nina is the most important. She's the one he sees. She's the one he calls by name. She's the one he cries out for during when he sees this burning has happened.
Yeah.
So why do you think Nina is the most significant or important in his life and in his situation?
I guess he saw himself in Nina more than anybody else in his family. Um, I mean, obviously he had a relationship with his wife. He had 3 children. They had a marriage and a house, but it was obvious he wasn't always there for his wife. His other 2 daughters were younger. Nina was the one that was taking care of them. So probably when he came home, it was Nina who filled him in on stuff that was happening around the house. And she was like not attached to him like in any kind of like romantic way. So she was easier to talk to. Um, I think it
Mhm.
makes total sense to have that bond like with your oldest child.
Okay. I didn't get the see now. I didn't see clearly if that she was the oldest child. I thought maybe there was one daughter that was older than her, but
I could be wrong.
it,
Okay.
it but I think your point is well made. Maybe she's the one he could talk to for some reason. And it's possible that the wife was somewhat mentally unstable. I mean,
Right,
probably
right.
not possible since she set herself on fire and the rest of the household. Um,
Yes.
but that also makes sense why then Ike and Mara have a connection, pretty strong connection, because they sort of have maybe similar family structures they're from. So maybe Mara even reminds him of Nina a little bit. Um,
Yeah,
Perhaps
absolutely.
his daughter was the type that asked questions and didn't just go with the flow. So yeah.
I wonder if
Okay.
Daniel and Elliot died in a house fire too. Wouldn't that be something? I'm kidding.
Hmm. I
They
mean,
died in they
the
died in a
hospital
spaceship
did look
crash.
pretty beat up.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually wondered when I saw the hospital, I was like, this reminds me a lot of the school in Dark at the end, in the
Yeah,
future
good
world
call.
when it's all radiated and Jonas goes back to the school to find more gas and more fuel to light
Oh,
the
hey, no
dark matter machine.
spoilers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true. Sorry. Just forget you heard anything I just said, everybody. But yeah, they might be reusing some of the sets from that show. Okay, so our next section is characters that you want to hang out with.
Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
I think that's a different page. Um, okay, this is gonna be like based on like everyday Steve, just like boring Steve. Um, I think my top two would be Oleg and Clements because they just seemed like agreeable, easy to talk to, easy to be around, kind of go along with what you want to do, and they'll be there protect you, hang out with you. I think they would both be good friends, Oleg
Hmm.
and Clements. When it comes to like hanging out, like party time, like we're going out, we're going to go to a show, we're going to get crazy. It's my boy Angel. I'm going out with Angel, man. He's
You're gonna
rich.
say Landon.
No, I mean Landon's fun. I watch TV with Landon. That'd be my job with Landon. We watch TV, but Angel would be my going out pal for sure. He'd get me in the front row of the concert. He'd get us backstage, VIPs. Come on, Angel. How
That's
about you?
true.
Who are your
I don't
buddies?
well, I would you're gonna think this is nuts. But I would want to hang out with Franz, I think.
Front.
Um
Okay, that's solid.
Sauce Boss.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
friends
mean,
with Sauce Boss, so I totally see that. But what's your reason?
I like complicated people. I like people that are going to argue with me and have a good lively discussion, and I
Okay,
feel like Franz really fits the bill on that. I mean, also I like bearded bigger men. So, I mean, I think he's a nice looking man also, and he hasn't had a lot of love in his life. And so,
true.
maybe I could help him out with that. But Franz would be a cool person to hang out with. Just because, yeah, he just has that energy that when he works hard and he plays hard.
And you know what? When Ike was all like, "We can't let the family know about this death," Franz was all like, "What? What?
Yeah.
You got to tell them." And he went and told them. Good on you, Franz.
Yeah.
Looking back on this series, yeah, Franz is a stand-up dude. Mutiny, but he was kind of, I can't blame the guy.
He was he had a little, there was a vie for control. I think he got really, I mean, I don't
Ah,
like the
right.
fact that he wanted to beat up, instantly felt that animosity towards Jerome.
Oh yeah, he started beating up your boy. I
Yeah.
mean, how'd you feel about that?
I mean, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Franz needed a woman's touch to help, like it wasn't when he started hanging out with Tove, he's became more redeemable
Yeah.
as he's one of the people that evolved as the show goes on, where he's like, okay, he makes, whatever you call it, spontaneous decisions that aren't always really good, but he does
Okay.
take action at least. And at the end of the day, he does take responsibility for his choices.
He
There's
did.
that moment where Eugen says, the penalty for this is death. And Franz accepts that. He sees that as a truth and doesn't
Yep.
cower or turn into a baby about it.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like when people take responsibility for their mistakes. I don't see Franz becoming a whiny baby like Lucien,
Not at all. Nope.
Lucien, I do not want to hang out with. I guess
No
everyone pointing
way.
this stuff.
That goes without saying.
Let's see who else. I mean, I want to hang out with cool Ike, Code Ike. I don't want to hang out with like undone Ike, as he goes along and just
What is happening?
what did you and Miss Franklin talk about?
I don't even know if he'd be a fun hang though, like when he was Coat Ike, because he just kind of kept to himself and he was kind of cold to Mara. You shouldn't be on this part of the ship. Get out of here.
Yeah, and he was all about the rules. That's not
Yeah.
really fun. So maybe
Nope.
I retract the whole thing. Maybe I should. I mean, he's handsome. He's handsome. Don't get me wrong. I also would like to chat with Virginia. I feel like have a battle of the wills. I want to. She was really intrigued when she knew Mara was maybe working on brains. So,
Yeah.
plus I've been Virginia in that scene when, like, I'm telling you, that was a great scene when she's counting her money. I mean, not that I count my money all the time, but she was
Smoke
knocking.
cigarettes.
I don't smoke cigarettes either, but she was knocking back some booze.
Right.
And she had a bath, she had her hair washed, she was relaxing after a lucrative day.
I know the scene well. I remember well.
Sure
And I
you do.
agree with you. I thought she seemed super cool. Yeah.
I liked when she had her hair down.
Yep.
She looked young, and her dress is pretty, but she needs to lose the attitude. But I bet when she's drinking after hours without the dress, she's much different.
She'd be the most fun person to be sitting at that table with her and Mara while she goes around and talks about everybody. I would love to have Virginia with me going out and she could talk about everybody and we could kind of, giggle at their misfortunes. And I think that'd be fun. But honestly, I really don't believe that. I don't like being snarky. That's why I like Virginia, because it's something that I'm not, I suppose. Mara, though, I really could see myself like hanging out and talking to Mara. I have a very good friend, Meg, who I've known like all my life. And she's like my deep conversation friend. And that's who Mara kind of reminds me of. And I think I've had some of these conversations with Meg. And Mara's just, a brilliant thinker. And when she's not at distress, like I'm thinking about the scene. I mean, not because they're in bed, but when she's with Daniel and they're relaxed and they're talking about Plato's cave, that's the Mara that I could see like just being cool, just to like hang out with and have some coffee with and just talk about stuff.
Yeah, have pillow talk and get up, put on a hospital gown. I mean, it's like a
No,
scene
no,
from
no.
the home. No.
You know, like they say with LSD, it's always set and setting. So in my set and setting, me and Mara would be like at, I don't know, at a coffee shop. We would
Hmm.
not be in bed together.
Yeah, I mean, Mara seems like, she's well read, and so I think
Yeah.
we could talk about books and stuff, but at the same time, she sort of doesn't have. I mean, you see when you hear the Mara at the beginning and she's doing that, the brain is wider than the sky. She sounds so mysterious and interesting to talk to. But then later on, when every time you see her and she's hanging out with her dad. Now, I mean, her dad probably brings out the worst in her, but she sort of lacks any imagination because all she keeps saying is, "He found out what you were doing on the ships. Where's my brother?"
That's
And
true.
she's almost has that laser focus of where she can't see outside of this box that she's had. And I mean,
Right.
many of the characters did that, especially in the beginning. And Anthony and I talked about, and maybe you talked about the fact that sometimes the characters sounded like they were just reading lines from video games, and
Yeah.
that they were sort of, it was almost like a script and they were just reading weird lines. But she's only, when she's in that distress position, she's sort of seems to only, she just has, like I said, this laser focused mind, and she's not able to have a good conversation. But I want to talk to the Mara from the episode 1, when she was talking about the brain holds all the secrets of the universe. Let's talk
Yep.
about that question, and that would be good before things fell apart.
Yep. That's the Mara I'm talking about as well. Exactly. The pre-freak out Mara.
Freak out
I
Mara.
don't want to be scrambling in tunnels with Mara. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. I would really, I would have loved, Nate, you're listening to this in post. Please tell us what characters you would want to hang out with, because we would have loved to hear your answers for this question. I have a feeling.
I was actually going to ask him if he would go ahead and do that for us, but I know he's busy, so that's the reason he's not here. So obviously he can't go and write out an essay for us.
Mhm.
But I would like to hear that. Put it in the comments, Nate. When you subscribe and follow, go ahead and put it in the comments.
Okay, so let's talk about evolved characters that we saw change for better or worse.
Okay.
You could call this the most evolved character. Is I don't have to say it any other way. Um, I have a couple for this. The first
Same.
one would be Tove. I
Okay.
guess just as you grew increasingly more irritated with Crester, I more just began to admire Tove more and more, and after I saw what she had been through with her family, because she does absolutely just come across like the biggest bitch at the beginning, and you think probably, oh, she's some kind of a homophobe. Like, she's really grossed out by the fact that her brother doesn't like that her brother likes men, which probably that was obviously part of society back then, and maybe even still today, who knows, that we still have homophobes out there. But she basically had to rescue herself in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. Her family, her brother did not take responsibility in a normal situation. If this man, the employer, was now, no one wanted to see Crester get shot or anything, but the guy was obviously just taking advantage of this situation to say, "Oh, well, since you did this to my son, I am now going to rape your sister." And so it's Tove essentially paying for Crester's crimes,
Right.
and the family either could not or would not stop this from happening. And as it's happening, they're even all averting their eyes, as if, Tove, you're on your own. We're just gonna sit here while this is happening and pretend it's not happening. That's part of their sickness. They have, like, whatever you call it, the push it under the rug kind of syndrome in the family, where it's like this elephant under the carpet. Um,
Elephant. Yeah.
yeah. And so, you know, you want your family, especially as a girl, you want your dad to be your hero, and here that didn't happen. I mean, Tove had to rescue herself, and then now she's watching Crester have a dalliance with another man, and so does that mean she should have been, you know, that she should have acted that way with her brother? Not necessarily, but at the same time, I just grew in empathy towards Tove and being with her parents who kept telling her, this, you have God's child, you have the light inside of you. And probably Tove wanted to say, no, I have my rapist baby, and that's what I'm carrying around.
Yeah.
Um, so she's a character I just grew to respect more and more, and almost wanted to protect. I wanted to protect Tove from having to deal with any more trauma or messed up people in the future. Poor lady was only left with Franz though at the end, but and then she even
But
lost
hey,
him. But yeah.
but I mean, she got your catch, man. So that's a pretty big catch. But I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm thinking that she's a much more complex character than I've given her credit for, because she kind of goes back and forth between being like a, stern and kind of like no holds barred, and then she's, protective and caring, and then she goes back and forth a lot. Um,
She's vulnerable. I mean, there's that scene where
very.
she's crying and Clemens is having to comfort her. Clemens has no idea what's going on, but shout out to Clemens. She's like how Ramiro was. She just saw a person in distress and decided to comfort them, even if they can't understand each other. Yeah.
So I wouldn't think about her as like my most evolved character or Crester. And I will say this because you reminded me, that's another reason I don't like Crester, is that he had a dalliance with this guy's son, whether that is what it is. And he did not ask for the outcome for, his sister to get traumatized like that. But at the same time, it's like he's saying all the wrong things to her. He's acting all the wrong ways to her. And on top of that, he's like having a dalliance with another man on repeated occasions. And when he's supposed to be looking for Ada, he's up there with Angel. And that makes Crester look terrible. I mean, in relation to what is going on with his family and his sister, that's the last thing he should be doing, is thinking about, cigarettes and Angel. But we're talking about evolved characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to bring it back around to somebody that I wanted to shout out when you were talking about Ramiro, because when we were talking about our least favorite characters, if you asked me after episode 1 and 2, I would probably say Ramiro was my least favorite character. And like when I go back and listen to me and Nate talking about Ramiro, like we just despise Ramiro. And we're like, you know, and I
What did
came
you despise about him at the beginning?
just exactly like what you said. He just seemed like he was harboring some sort of resentment against Angel, and just he was a stiff. At the first episode, you're led to believe he's a priest, and he just seems like he's so unfun and stiff and um up his own butt. And I don't know, really came around, especially with Ike when they got locked up together, and he's swinging those hammers around, and he's running around, and he's trying to get plans together, and he's helping Tove. I mean, he really came around as like a top guy, and I would not have expected that in the first couple of episodes, that I would like Ramiro as much as I did. And yeah, I think that's my most notable character change, is Ramiro. How about you? Who did you think?
Yeah, I mean, besides Tove, I think there are a lot of characters evolved. I mean, we talked about Ike already, how he went from like smooth operator to an anxious mess. um but and a lot of the evolutions that happen actually are from like good to worse. But like on Hell is, he's a perfect example, honestly, where he seems like really fun and rowdy and sort of the life of the party, and then he just becomes more and more confused and mentally unstable as the show goes along. He's used to, because of his money and his position,
Yeah.
he's always the person that's sort of in control and able to control things. And I feel like that moment when he's not in control,
Yeah.
when Ivan comes in and he gets to experience what it's like to be the person that is mistreated. He's
Hmm.
mistreated by people in third class, and he gets spat upon by Crester. He was thinking, oh, I have a good relationship with this guy, even though it's just a sexual dalliance. He's like, oh, I'm in, here's Crester, he's gonna like tell them to leave me alone, sort of hiding behind his money. And once he realizes he can't do that, and then Ramiro leaves him for a time, he sort of
Hmm.
abandons him and says, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to go tell the captain. Angel gets abandoned, and he has to see what it's like to really be by himself when he's used to always having control.
Hmm.
And so we saw how quickly he became just weak, a weak person who, without his money, without his white superhero costume, he has nothing, and he can't even shovel coal correctly, really. I mean, he's never worked a day in his life. Those
But
powdery hands, these like soft putty feeling hands.
you're right. But he did it though. He did it. That's how he died, was working as third class,
Mm-hmm.
shoveling coal like the underlings. And he was doing it. It was only him and Ramiro at the very end, and they kind of shrugged their shoulders and kept on going. So I think that says
Yeah.
something about Angel right there,
Mm-hmm.
that he evolved right alongside Ramiro.
Yeah.
And his dying words, like, sweet, sweet guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, I don't have anybody else really characters evolved because yeah, mine was Ike, Angel, and Ramiro. So there you go.
Okay, so our next category we thought of was most notable death.
Oh man, I
I
think
have
this is
to.
this is a gimme, right?
Oh, well, go ahead then.
Oleg. That was like the one that like I think like grabbed me the most. I guess there's two.
Mm-hmm.
Oleg, just because of the character and how he died, the water, protecting Ling, etc. But the other notable death was the same guy that I despise, Crester, because he's like the key. Like we see Crester become one of those sheep
Mm-hmm.
and jump over the side of the ship. That's a
Right.
pretty like aha wow moment. Like, oh my God, one of the main people did it. Um, Not expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was pretty notable too.
Well, before I share mine, I did one thing I noticed that was kind of funny is that when it came time to the sheep to fall off of the ship, I thought it was interesting that some people just fell over. Some of them stood on the bar, and some
Yeah,
of them carefully climbed.
I know. I noticed that too.
It was I was like, wait a second, they're sort of different. Obviously, these sheep have different physical abilities. Some of them have much better balance than the rest of them. I would be one of the ones climbing over the rung, one rung at a time, one leg at a time, as I cling on before I fall off.
Right.
Um, but this category was actually tough for me, but I wanted to save talking about it until we got on the podcast to mention that, because we called this the most notable death. And during the show, there were several characters that you were struck by because of their death. But then once you figure out they're not really dead, they're just put out of commission, it sort of
Right.
makes the deaths less impactful.
Sure.
So I do think that's interesting. But when Ada, we didn't know what happened to Ada.
Right.
And
Good
so
call.
when that happened, really immediately putting Daniel in your like world most wanted list, like why did you kill this little girl and what did you do to her exactly? We didn't see it. So that was really got your attention, and plus that
Yes.
scene was so well done with the music, the creepy music. I think it's the initiating shutdown music. And we've
Sweet
got
child of time. Of course, there was that song going on too.
yes, yes. But that really got my attention. I also felt really shocked about the boys thing until he just popped out of a cabinet. So
Oh,
um that
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
lost its power,
Lost the impact.
lost
But
the
yeah,
impact.
that's the death that I think, now that you mention it, that's the one that like I kind of like was most like appalled and like just
Mhm.
flabbergasted by, because I remember like the first time I've seen that, and every time I've seen it since then I kind of have like a deja vu of that like feeling in my stomach of like how far you have to fall and like just the depths of the ocean. Yeah, that was a big impact. You're right about that one. But then
Mhm.
he's all great. He comes out, he just respawns like the
Yeah.
dead kitty is.
And with Oleg, I was upset, but then later, and maybe it's because I turned into a Henry, but I mean, you are sort of watching this thing happen and you're like, why are you making these dumb decisions? Like Ling goes out to the
Correct.
deck and then Oleg's like,
Oh,
Ling, and
yeah.
he goes after her. And it's like, what if you just stayed at the steering wheel and Ling, because as soon as she went out there and she saw that her mom disappeared, she probably would
Yeah.
have come back in.
Yeah.
Um, but it was sort of, we haven't seen yet how the death works, right?
Right.
Like with Oleg, he, he's obviously still on the ship at the end, so we see that. But what is his state? Is he still a living, breathing soul, or is he like a vegetable or somebody they've preserved to be revived if they can find a new brain for him or something? Um, but that, of course, we had gotten. I mean, was Oleg the last person that died? Like the last character who died,
An-
quote unquote?
Angel came after that.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember in what order they happened, but he was the one we all really Oleg was one of the ones we all really liked, and so
And that's another reason that I have Ling on my, that's why she dropped down so low, is like a lot of these poor decisions that she made. And that was a big one, running
yeah.
out there on the deck to see her dead mom, who she saw jump over the side of the ship.
hmm These people and their silly emotions.
I know that gets them every time. If only they could learn to control their emotions.
Mm. I mean, Franz's death was tragic to me, now, especially now that I wanted to have the beer with him. But he died a very brave and noble death. And so yeah, I thought that wasn't something I expected to see or them to do with so much emotion, because he's semi on the border of being a side character, right? I mean,
Right.
we have to give him a lead character role because he did have a poster. But
Yeah,
he's
that's
not on
right.
the pod. Um, he's not in one of the pods at the end, but he's on that border of almost being a side character. But the way they filmed it was just so you know seeing him with his eyes open just floating in the
Yeah.
water, and after he told Tove to go on without him, it was very, it was an impactful death there.
Yeah, I guess, I know now your connection to Franz, but at the same time, I think his death was kind of almost sidelined. And I feel bad for that for him, because like his death came at the exact same time as Anchor and Ivan's. So they all kind of died at the same time.
Mhm.
It kind of reminds me of like the day that Michael Jackson died. Farrah Fawcett also died, but nobody remembers that. They just remember Michael Jackson dying. But don't
Mhm.
sideline these side characters. You got to honor all of them. So they should have like maybe had separate scenes for them, but they
Mhm.
kind of mashed their scene in together.
Hmm. I know I saw them. That's interesting because that you're right, but yet Franz was the one that got my attention. But I guess that's because and that's how you probably feel about Ling. But with Anker and Iben, I was like, this death is so pointless. But you guys chose it yourself. So
Right.
it's hard to feel sorry for somebody who chose it to just sit there and not run. Even if you like think, okay, we get it. You're just gonna give up there. That's fine.
Yeah, he's not a hero. That's true. He did
Mhm.
something to help keep the water out from everybody else. So yeah,
Yeah.
honor you, Franz.
Okay, so memorable moments from the show overall, like what are the moments you really
Right.
remember loving?
Yeah, this is my last page, and I got a lot of them. For me, I guess the first thing I wrote down, which I guess is telling, is the discovery of the dream portals. I think that was like episode 3 or 4. Is like the first time that we see a character actually go through the portal, come out the other side, and then you see like the tunnel behind them just hanging out in midair there. Um, that was a fantastic moment for me personally. I talked about this in my podcast, how impactful like the movie Time Bandits was to me as a kid, in those portals that they went through repeatedly in Time Bandits, and the time portals, and not the time portals, but the gateways they use in the Wheel of Time series are similar. And that's just a fascinating concept to me, and I dream about it. And I, as a little kid, I would stare into mirrors like thinking that was a portal taking me to some other world. I think that's because of the movie Phantasm that I saw at a very young age. But that moment for me was like my like blow the mind, love it moment. And that came after the TV sets. The TV sets might have been like the first like, wow moment. So yeah, I brought it around to 2 moments. So I'll let you either take it from there or add another moment.
I think for me, probably the moment I remember most is when Mara discovers the portal for the first time. I love that
Hmm.
scene. She goes down the ladder and follows the boy, and that's when he has the beetle, puts it on the ground. The beetle, well, actually, no, Elliot's already used the beetle to go through. She crawls through, and there's this creepy music, the reflection of her body against the black glass, and it
Oh, allow me.
creates this.
Ha, 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 ha. That's what the music was doing. It was
Oh,
going ha, 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 ha.
I don't remember what the cue was, but I'll trust you with that. But there was like a Mora on the left, the real Mora, and then a Mora on the right. So it created
Oh,
this really
yeah.
cool visual effect. And she's sort of sliding through she's almost sliding side saddle, like she's not crawling. But I love that scene because, and that's the first time we go through the portals as well. So we're discovering it along with her. So that moment was visually and audibly, I guess, a just stunning moment. And that is part of episode 5, The Calling, which is your favorite episode, I believe.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think we're talking about the exact same moment, except for me, it was when she actually came out and you saw like the image behind her in the sky. But yeah, we like it from different perspectives, which is appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Through the different windows, one side of the window or the other.
Another one of the top moments, my favorite moments, is also one of Anthony's favorite moments when Elliot speaks for the first time. Everybody rejoices. Everybody like changes their opinion about Elliot, and that was a big moment for everybody.
Did you change your opinion of Elliot in that moment?
I did. Me and Nate always made fun of how creepy he was. We called him Zombie Boy, but as soon as he started talking, he had that little cute British voice. I immediately he enamored me immediately. So I didn't call him Zombie Boy after that moment.
From that moment on, what did you call him after that before you knew he was
Elliot.
Elliot? What do you mean
Oh,
you didn't know he was Elliot yet?
I guess I guess I honored the name Zombie
You
Boy up
probably kept
until
going with
then.
Zombie Boy, I'm
I
sure, but
probably did, but I mean, I liked him a lot more once he started talking and making things happen and guiding the beetle around and
mm-hmm.
yeah.
They had to set him up as being an ambiguous character at the beginning. You didn't know
Yeah.
what was going on, so that he became more expressive as time went on. When he speaks is definitely a big part, but before then he's making he has the creepy shadows under his eyes. But yeah, Anthony was so anti Elliot, anti the boy. Like he was so upset about that.
So was Nate.
hmm I think my other big standout moment would just be when they go through the whirlpool. Again, I like a
Oh
good
yeah.
visual, obviously, I like a good visual sequence, and seeing them go through that whirlpool and come out on the other side with Ling Yi on the deck of the ship was just a beautifully filmed scene any way you slice it. And it did strike me that at the beginning of the show, the very first scene when she's doing the poem, we go through a whirlpool.
Yep.
And I'm sure you noticed that too, but it's
Yep.
like, oh wow, they gave that, but we had no idea what that was talking about. So that was a really cool moment.
I didn't write that down as one of my favorites, but it must be because like at work in my office, I have like, the two big, dual screen computers, and that's my screensaver is that image of Ling Yi, one of my least favorite characters, but it's one of my favorite moments. Going through that whirlpool and you seeing that light up there. I love that image, and I chose that one to be what I stare at all day.
Mhm.
Um,
I do have one more, so go ahead with your next one.
well, I'm gonna blast past one because Ada's death. We've already talked about it, but I think that was a very key moment. It was an episode ender. Ike meeting Mara, episode one. They put so much weight into that scene that it was bound to mean something. And watching it again, having Ike's face like become clear out of the fog, and it just means so much. And I think that was a strong moment for anybody who was going to be into the show. If you got to that scene and it didn't do anything for you, then the show's not for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my next one was actually the Ada, but it wasn't just Ada, it was the whole thing leading up to that with the initiating shutdown music. You have Angel and Ramiro. That's when they get down together. And then you also have Ada walking through and following the beetle.
Right.
It's very intriguing. I believe the sun is setting right then, and Daniel just appears like this looming figure over her, and we're like, Frodo Baggins, don't do it. Yeah, and the beetle, when she sees the beetle, it's on the carpet as well. So I don't know. It's just a very well filmed sequence from start to finish.
Yeah, right on. Um, Elliot being resurrected in the cabinet was a huge moment. Not expecting that. His death was a huge moment, and the resurrection was a huge moment. So I think that's pretty telling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the last one I have written down out of all these is Daniel and Elliot's first moment meeting as not as father and son, but when we see them, that I thought it was a pretty big moment that made a bunch of questions pop through my head because we didn't know their relationship, and we saw them catch eyes a couple times, but then when they're actually exchanging dialogue in like by the grave
Mm-hmm.
that first time, it just created so many questions, and they just seemed like a natural pair, like they belonged together. And I like Elliot now. Ever since he started talking, I like him. And he was talking a lot in that scene, so of course I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where he gains even more expression. And then the next scene is when Daniel begins actually talking to him like a father would instead of an associate or colleague
Right. Yep.
or servant. Maybe he is how he would address servant. Did you find it? Where is it? He's just like scary Daniel versus fatherly Daniel. It's a pretty extreme, change that happens.
Well, I had two moments that I should bring up that aren't like big top moments, but they made me laugh every time. I'm not alone in this. Um, I'm not alone in this one. That line from Angel when he says, to go have a little chat with God, ask him why he made you a sheep. That's when like I was like, Angel, you are devious and you are bad, and I like you.
Hmm.
I just thought that line was great. And then when Ike busts in the room in episode 3 or 4, and he grabs poor little Elliot and he shoves him against the wall and starts screaming at him, that cracked me up so much because it was just such an inappropriate scene and not what you're expecting the captain of the ship, the cool dude, to like assault a little boy. And it was just done in such a funny way that it always made me laugh. It's supposed to appall you, but it was funny to me.
I thought you were gonna say when you said when Ike pops out. I thought you were gonna talk about that scene when he opens the grate and sticks his
That's another great
because
moment in
you liked
comedy.
that moment so much.
I did. It was a Looney Tunes moment.
You needed like a sound effect, like
Yeah,
it was like
absolutely.
whoop. Okay. So that is, do you have any more amazing moments you want to share with the viewers, the listeners?
The starting of the ticking noise that like
The
freaked
ticking
everybody
noise.
out.
Yeah.
The ticking noise was wild. That came right after the sirens, but um it was ominous and it was more dreadful than the sirens, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, the different noises. I mean, an air siren noise is always frightening. It just reminds you of you know, what, World War II, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody duck and cover, I
Yeah,
think is
under
what they
your
used to
desk,
call it.
kids, where it's safe.
So we're now gonna shift and talk about moments that bugged us, or you're calling it you lost me moments.
Yeah. um I think that we're in agreement that the Matrix time stopping bullet moment was just disjointed and not explored, not explained. It wasn't Elliot that did that. Elliot doesn't know how to do that crap. It wasn't the pyramid. That whole like scene just completely lost me and it never came back around. And I know that it would have explored that in season 2 or 3. I don't think they would have left us hanging like that, but that was a definite weirdo moment. That was also the moment that led us to the movie Tenet as well. So we could be grateful that that moment was in the show, but
Yeah.
still, it made me scratch my head and look around weird.
It was the most I would you it's the most special effecty moment in the show. And it does seem that like it comes out of nowhere, and it really, you never don't see anything like that the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Um so that makes it seem even more odd. The only thing that really bothered me about that, which we kind of talked in our DMs already, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway, is the fact that she plucks that bullet out of midair and doesn't burn her fingers off.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the thing I wanted to show you, which I sent you that one scene from Tenet,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and the woman is handling those bullets with those neoprene gloves or whatever those gloves are made of
Right.
in Tenet, because you're dealing with bullets, and the if even if the bullet was frozen in midair, it still had energy. It would have been hot. And so that one part bugged me, especially knowing how much care and attentiveness Bo and Yante put into the time travel
Yeah.
science and physics in Dark. That moment seemed a little sloppy when it was
Yes.
put together, but it was still an intriguing moment. So it didn't bother me. I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about it in the context of Tenet and how they handled those things differently.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Tenet, you may not know what we're talking about. But we may be doing a podcast or something about Tenet later on, because I asked Steve to watch that movie to understand why this scene bothered me so much. But
Well, in the case of Tenet, it's simple. They're inverted bullets.
Yeah.
Simple explanation. What's the
Mhm.
explanation? 1899. They don't have one. So I'm sorry. Tenant wins. So how about you? Did you have any moments like that that really stuck up for you?
Um, I mean, it more bothered me that it wasn't really that I expected to be lost because that's what these showrunners do. But it did bother me when we would have like these television screens, and then we wouldn't see the television screens again for 3 episodes.
Oh,
So that would
okay.
sort of bother me because in a normal show, like let's say Lost. Okay, I'm not that I don't want to say normal and be like, okay, whether she's saying if that's whether good or bad, but for
Okay.
instance, in Lost, when we see the hatch at the end of that season, the next episode goes into the hatch and explains like what the hatch is.
Right.
And so having the TV screen show up and then just completely acting like that never happened at the beginning of the next episode seemed a little like not cool. Don't leave us hanging like that. You got to give us some, at least start the episode with the TV screens, even if you're not ready to show us where we are. Do us the
Hmm.
honor of like not insulting our intellect that you put a different setting into our show, and then now you're acting like it didn't happen.
I guess so. I saw it differently. I kind of saw it as it wasn't resolved the next episode, but it did make me look at the next episode differently with this new suspicion in my mind that it was a simulation.
Mhm.
And I think that's what the intention was. And they didn't want to just, you know, blast it over your head, I guess, even though it would have been nice to have a nice resolution that way. I mean, that
Mhm.
is what you're supposed to do. When you end with a cliffhanger, you're supposed to start the next episode where the cliffhanger left off. And you're absolutely right. I honor your opinion there. It just didn't bother me at all because it changed my way of thinking of looking at things, and so it was mission accomplished for me. It made me start thinking about simulation. I think that next episode is when me and Nate started talking the simulation talk,
Mhm.
um, because of those TV sets, and then we were like, everybody, not just us, was talking about the tube screens and like how they were 60s 70s TVs and how interesting that was. um yeah,
But
I
if
can
they
see
wanted to
that.
prolong the mystery a little longer about what was going on, they could have thrown the TV screens a little bit later,
Yes,
and
true.
not thrown it in at the end of episode 2, and then then gone on to something else. And there was like a brand new cliffhanger. The next episode, they had the ship disappear.
Yeah, true.
So it was a little like stopping and starting, kind of like getting a little momentum. And you're like, "Oh, that's cool," and then now we're back and pretending like nothing else is going on. Um, so that it was, I think that's part of television though, which is why, and we're the opposite about this. I watch more movies. I don't often do TV shows because those kinds of things can frustrate me, especially when you're extending it. Now, this is only 8 episodes, but there are other shows that have, let's say, right now I'm watching the last season of Walking Dead. That has like, I think it has like 20 some episodes in it. It's like if they had pulled that crap on that show, I'd be really ticked off. I had to wait like 20 episodes to find out what's going on with those TV screens.
Yeah, oh yeah, I hear that.
Mhm.
um I put the TV reveal under the same moments too, except for I wasn't thinking like you lost me. I was thinking more of like that was a wow, kind of like holy cow I kind of put it in the same category. But I do have two character decisions, not necessarily show decisions, but I guess they are because the characters involved the shows, one of which we've already discussed, which is when Ike makes a decision not to tell the family about Ada. That was
Mm,
a really weird call on Ike's part, and it didn't make any sense. Um, so that kind of left me weird. Like, why would that character choose to do that? That doesn't seem to gain anybody, doesn't gain him anything at all.
mm,
And then the moment when Jerome and our lady Clements pick up Lucian to take him to the medicine. That's the most ridiculous choice I've ever seen, maybe in any TV show ever.
Yeah, I thought about that later too, but I think part of my thinking was if they were afraid that if one or both of them left, they would have to go there and come back. And, but
Yeah.
yeah, lugging someone up and down those steps, it really didn't make sense. You're right about that. With Ike and the family not telling them, I think part
Uh-huh.
of that was they needed to set up a conflict between him and Franz, where Franz was going to go against the captain's orders.
Sure.
And so this was our way to see, like, okay, he's now operating under his own authority, and
Okay.
that was a cue that was happening.
I'll give it a
Um,
pass then. Good call.
yeah, but
But you
maybe
can't you can't excuse Jerome and Clements though. I don't think you can excuse them.
yeah, that's pretty wild. Um, you could also put the category there of Franz being like, "Hey, Oleg, go up and steer the ship."
Right.
Yeah.
That's another bad call. And there was no call for that one either. That was another Jerome. They were all panicking at that moment, I guess. Like nobody knew what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's all you got?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I did write down here. I guess I'll say it since you're asking. I wrote down "Don't Fear the Reaper" because I did not like that song choice for that moment in episode 4. Thought that was a corny choice. So that one kind of made me sour. Like when that moment happened, I was really happy. I was really psyched. And then I thought of like about 20 better songs they could have put in that moment. Heather and myself have been watching a show called In the Dark on Netflix. And it's a pretty good show, but they have the corniest choices for music in this show. And it really takes you out of moments when they just choose songs like Don't Fear the Reaper that you've heard 1,000 times in your life and have been used in 1,000 movies. And it's like, okay, it's getting used again for the exact same purpose. I see. They're talking about death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get it. So that was just a personal moment that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the ending songs were
7 of
um
8 were great.
well, I was saying some of the ending songs have been overplayed. Not all of them.
True.
Um but yeah. I mean, in the first episode you had White Rabbit, but at least in the theme song it was an
Right.
alternative version of that. Um
And then we had Watchtower, but we were expecting that because we saw Watchtower during the teaser. So I was
mhm.
expecting Watchtower. So I gave that one a pass. All the other songs they chose were fantastic episode enders, and I can't be more happy with the choices they made, other than Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult.
Well, you heard it here, folks. So, when we get the redub or the director's cut of the show, switch out that song for something else, will ya?
Yep,
Such
maybe
as,
In the Light by Led Zeppelin. Maybe one of the crescendo moments of A Day in the Life by the Beatles. I don't know.
yeah, okay. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to fill it in right now since
I
we're
think
on the topic.
In the Light by Led Zeppelin is my top choice for that moment.
Excellent.
Drop it in the show right there. There you go. You
Yeah.
got editing skills, right?
um, my next topic had been notable musical cues, but you know what? I've already talked about all those already in this episode.
Yep.
So, did you want to say anything else about the music?
No, no. I mean, yeah, we've touched upon all of it.
Yeah.
Even the sound cues, the way they recorded it, all the ending songs,
Hmm.
killer. I mean, that's what really attracted me first off to Dark Ways Productions, period, is watching Dark, their intro song, and all the song choices within. That's what really won me over with that show was the music and the tone and the cinematography, like the color palettes. So that got me on board with 1899 before it even before I even seen the first episode. I was already on board with it.
It is interesting that, Ben Frost had collaborated with people all over the world, musicians all over the world, just like with the languages. We have languages from all over the world. We also had music, and same with Ludwig Göransson, who did the music for like the Black Panther. He did the music for Tenet also, but the music for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, he collaborated with musicians from all over the world to make that soundtrack, since it was an indigenous culture in South America. For instance, he would go there and learn some of the instruments and the ways that they would make music there to make that soundtrack. And so I appreciated that he had, and a lot of the music has like Spanish undertones, or the Dutch music, like the music about, I'm sorry, Danish. It has the song that goes with that cultural thing about needing a window to be left open so that the soul can leave. And so he put those touches in that it sort of captures all the cultures that we are learning about or visiting through the characters in the show. So shout out for the soundtrack. We love it.
Yeah, it's great. Hey, the Black Panther, I did not care for those movies at all, but those soundtracks I listen to all the time. Those are fantastic soundtracks. I'm glad you brought that up, especially to the first Black Panther movie. I mean, I listen to that soundtrack constantly and do not care one lick for Black Panther or any of his Marvel buddies.
Yeah. I love that composer. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I heard that our boy the composer Hans, help me out here. He usually does Christopher Nolan's movies.
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. He was supposed to do the music for Tenet, I understand, but he didn't do it
Yeah, he
because
was
he was
busy doing the
doing
music
Dune.
for the James Bond movie. So
Okay, I thought he was doing Dune at that time. But yeah, I've read
Dune
the
as
same
well.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually Dune. So that's how they found Ludwig, who, Ludwig did the soundtrack for The Mandalorian and got fame for that. So then I feel like he was a great choice, and I'm just thrilled to bits that he's continuing to do that. I mean, Hans Zimmer is great, but I also want, we need to make room for new people as well. So
Absolutely agreed.
yeah. Right on, as you'd say. So, Steve, we've come to the end of our trip,
Yeah.
but it's not the end of our journey.
No. It's only the beginning, right? I think is this the first full podcast that you and I have done together? I think it is,
Yes,
right?
with just the two of us.
Yeah.
We did a
Not the
short.
last.
We did a
Not the
short. Yeah.
Yeah. I imposed a short, like 15-minute pod on you, and you imposed a 3-hour, $18.99 podcast on me in return. And you're not seeing the last of Steve and Lindsay. That's right. We're gonna dive into the dark ways, aren't we?
Yes. So Steve, and Introvoid is what we also call him. He is finishing up his Wheel of Time rewatch with James the Marshland Monster. And once they finish that, Steve and I are going to embark upon a journey through dark. And this is very exciting because I love dark, and I have done recaps of these, but I almost felt like I missed the boat on dark, not to be too punny, but I really felt like, okay, there's already so many great dark podcasts.
Yep.
And you missed your chance to do that one. But I think for both of us, watching how people reacted to 1899, and many people who had not watched dark but had started with 1899 are now going to dark or people who already watched Dark are going back to Dark to watch it
That's right.
again. And if this show just doesn't seem to quit, people are always still discovering it to this day. I will get comments on those recaps saying, I just started watching. Thank you so much for doing these recaps. And so it, you know, you asked me to do this recap, to recap Dark. And so I agreed. But Steve, why don't you say to our viewers, why is it you wanted to visit Dark again?
Yeah, for the exact same reason I wanted to do the Wheel of Time podcast. Because I enjoyed that show and I wanted to watch it with a more more. I'm running out of words, Lindsay. We used all of our words, and I don't have any left.
More detail, more attention to
Yeah,
detail.
more attention to detail. I wanted to, and another thing is there was no there's very few Wheel of Time recap podcasts out there. So I wanted to make that available, and at the same time, I wanted to keep myself in the world. It was a self-serving thing I was doing. I wanted to show the show to James, but at the same time, I wanted to understand it better myself, and I wanted to look for clues that might come up in season 2. I wanted to look for book Easter eggs, and no better way to do that than to watch it, take notes, and do it with somebody else who also has a keen eye that can pick up things that you might miss. So the show 1899 came around. I wanted to do that. I really wanted to watch the show. I was really into it, and I recognized it as a puzzle box show. So again, I wanted to do this for myself. So I would be in tune and I would watch it and pay attention and be able to offer, a recap for people who are like me that drive around all day and like to listen to recaps of shows they watch. Dark also is probably more than any of them the most self-serving podcast that I want to do because I watched all of Dark. I binged it, which is something I don't normally do. I watched like 1 to 2 episodes like every night, and I finished the whole series like within like a 2-week period. And I would do the thing where like I would start an episode and then I would fall asleep and then I would not quite know what I missed and then I just watch the next episode and like there was stuff that I missed. There was things that went over my head. And when we got towards the end, I saw the end. I know how it ends. Everything is spoiled, but I don't really quite understand all the connections. I didn't quite understand who was connected to who, and how these things went. I figured the best way to do it is to recap it and to do it myself and to take my notes and to watch it twice. And I knew that you had done the recaps too, so it just seemed like an obvious move to get back into that world, especially now that door has been opened again thanks to 1899. If it wasn't for 1899, I probably would not be doing the Dark podcast. So like it's kind of like an A to B to C situation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Everything's
there you go.
connected. Everything's
Everything's
connected is what you're
connected.
trying to say.
Yeah.
That's a big line from the Dark fandom. So you probably already know that, but everybody says everything is connected.
Yep.
So yes, thank you for pouring all that out. I totally agree. It's going to be a exhausting but rewarding journey. I say exhausting just because I feel like this show Dark does take a lot of energy and attention to be able to really savor it. And if this is
Right.
going to be my recap podcast show, we will definitely be savoring it. So
Yes.
I'm thinking we'll probably do a similar format that you did where we're recapping one episode a week so we can take our time with it. And I already have written recaps. I will post a link for that in the show notes so you can know where to find those. But we'll also be, when I make my posts on my website, I will also be sharing those each week so you can have the recap and the video and the sound file together in one post, the same as I did 1899. So whatever format, your preferred format for recapping this, you'll be able to do all of this at once. But this show definitely rewards you with rewatches by doing that. And it also, I would say, you keep finding new things each time. And each time you watch the show, you're watching it during a different phase of your life. And so things are probably going to hit you differently as well.
True.
So that is what's coming up for the future of the Sweet Child of Time and the One of My Stories collaboration. I think we have it scheduled to start at the end of March. So
Yeah, I was
coming
looking
up.
at I was looking at my calendar. It looks like March 20th is when we're supposed to record. Is when we're supposed to get together and record the first episode. So I'll release it the
Wow.
same week
Okay.
personally. But if we got to push that back, we got to push it back. There's no guns involved.
Yeah.
I'm not Tove running at you with a gun.
Okay, that's good to know.
a date on a calendar written in pencil is all that is.
I would like to get my 1899 recaps published before I move on to Dark. Dark is already done, but still, once I go to Dark, I'm not gonna want to go back to 1899. So,
Right.
but it's coming soon, is what you need to know, dear viewers. It's coming
Correct.
soon, and you'll be able to follow that at both of our channels. So, is there anything else we want to say before we do our shout outs and talk about where people can find us?
Nope. I'm
Nope.
ready for that time, man.
You're ready for after we've gone almost 3.5 hours, you're ready to wrap this up.
Yeah, I'm surprised. If we're gonna release this as a two-parter or like go ahead and just release the whole thing. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right. So Steve, thank you so much for your time and attention. Why don't you tell people how they can find you and all of your great material?
Thank you for saying that. I guess Instagram is a great place to find me because I post my links in my profile description. I have an intro.void. That's my main podcast feed. That's my main Instagram account. I do have a link tree, and maybe Lindsay will put that link tree link in her notes. She's nodding her head yes, because the link tree, of course, has every single link. Basically, I do Sweet Child of Time every week. I'm starting to do a podcast called This Week in Animals, where I interview people about pets and animals. You'll find that right there on the link tree and right on my Instagram. I've got a Sweet Child of Time pod Instagram as well, but really that Introvoid one is your one-stop shop for Steve Barnes.
Mm-hmm. So that's the best place. You're also on Twitter.
Well, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on all that stuff. But really, the Instagram is where I seem to get people talking to me most and get the most interaction. So I would encourage people to do that. Or
yeah,
you heard it. How about you, Lindsay?
Well, I'm at One of My Stories, of course, the number one of my stories on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, SoundCloud, YouTube, and probably something else I'm forgetting. Or you can get on my website at oneofmystories.com. That's the number one of my stories.com. And with that, we're going to say adieu to you, dear viewers. If you've hung in for this almost 3.5 hour recording, kudos to you. But even if you tapped out after 20 minutes, we still appreciate you.
That's right.
Leave a comment, leave a follow, leave a review.
Leave a kiss.
Yeah. But we're gonna say good night now. Steve always likes to say on his show that I hope you always find water and shade. So I don't want him to feel like we didn't get to say that to each other. So
okay.
I hope you find water and shade, Steve.
I hope you found water and shade. Right behind you, there's lots of water and there's lots of clouds for lots of shade cover. I think you're covered, Lindsay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. This is Lindsay, One of My Stories, signing off.
Steve, Sweet Child of Time. Bye-bye.